What's up? Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I'm Morrow, your storyteller for today, and with me I have some more RPG horror stories. RPG horror stories are like a train wreck. It's horrible, it's terrible, but we can't look away. And that's why they're entertaining. I've noticed the sentiment that we need more glory stories in our stories on the side. I think we do need more glory stories. I just don't know where to find them. I know there's a subreddit for RPG glory stories, but from what I understand, it hasn't been active for like over 6 months or something, or hasn't been overly active. If you want me to cover RPG glory stories, you can either 1, email it to me in the email in the description below, or 2, leave in the comments other subreddits or other places where we can find RPG glory stories, and I'll gladly read them along with the horror stories. Anyway, let's go ahead and get to the first video of RPG horror stories. DM screws over the party because I misunderstood what he said. I joined a one-shot with some friends a while back. Basically, the premise is that we are adventurers from different universes that have been summoned into this sort of gladiator fight that broke up into 4 quadrants. Everything but us is placed in a time stop until we activate one of the fights, and then we move on to the next fight once we finish the one we're on. Game starts off pretty normal. We'll introduce our characters and get the opportunity to roll checks to learn about the different fights beforehand before heading into the next fight. We get progressively stronger healing items after each fight, so while we aren't given a chance to rest, we at least being able to get healed up in between rounds. I'm playing an Eldritch Knight Divination Wizard based off an NPC in one of my games that serves as a witch hunter slash head of the secret police from Strahd von Zarovich's son, who is now the Baron. I don't remember the exact specifics since this happened a while ago, but I rolled in that 20 check in the top left corner of the map, which is a spell-jamming ship placed in this little pocket of astral sea. Other checks are done by other players and myself into the other regions, but this is the crucial bit for the story. First fight goes off without a hitch. It's a duel in a small western-style street against enemies based off of PCs from the campaign the DM is running in the same server. Most of the players are from that game, so it's a fun thing for them to have to fight out themselves or their friends for a bit. Second fight goes pretty well. We end up killing a green dragon. I'm able to barely keep one of the PCs alive with a well-timed thunderstep over to the cleric for an upcast cure wounds. After that fight ends, we decide to break the game up into a second session as it was getting late for some of the players. We spread out across an 8-hour difference as the far ends. Start of the session is where things start to go a bit weird. I don't remember what it exactly was, but there was some strange rule interpretation at some point that put me at least one of the other players a bit off. We end up killing a fire giant before he can knock us too low, so we end up going into the final fight with some leftover healing items to spare. Unfortunately, since we weren't told before the first fight that we wouldn't be able to rest after each round, we're getting down to our last resources as we used up more spell slots and abilities than we would have in the first fight otherwise. Before we start the fight in the Astral Sea, we ask some quick questions to bounce off the nat 20 from the previous session that I rolled. In his description, he refers to my PC fully understanding how this space works and us being able to move up and down throughout the space. The problem starts where I didn't realize that he just means up and down in relation to the 2D map, not the actual physical 3D space of the game world. So we roll initiative and place ourselves where we want in the map. Myself and the other martial PC put ourselves right up against the enemy at the bowsprit. One PC stays to the back of the ship to fire at the enemy with his bow, and the cleric and the other spellcaster sit at the bottom of this arena, directly south of us. At the top of the turn, this golden-masked Illithid springs into action, grabbing the Marshal with his tentacles. Marshal will have to start making intelligence saves on his go. I'm up next, and I put myself down into the void of the Astral Sea. And when I'm 30 feet away from the Illithid, I cast Thorn Whip, pulling him off the bow before Misty stepping back onto the deck. Yeah, I know it's kind of a cheap move, but before the fight I asked if I could use Thorn Whip to move people through the Astral Sea, to which he responds, yes. Now I'm willing to change up my plans if the DM decides against it when I put my plan into action. Okay, that actually sounds really cool. I'm not even kidding you. That actually sounds so cool. Thorn whipping somebody off the thing and then Misty stepping back. Oh, that actually sounds so cool. This fight seems very dynamic and cinematic. So I teleport back into the deck and the DM moves the Illithid directly south, right on top of the cleric and the other spellcaster. Something neither of them wanted, since they wanted to stay away from the fight and blast off ranged spells to knock the enemy down. I asked for clarification from the DM, and he says that he pulled the enemy down off the bow, just as I'd asked. When I tell him that I meant vertically down, he specifies that we're not able to move vertically through the sea, only on the same plane of height. At this point, I say that I would have acted differently since my character has a full understanding of how the astral sea works in this space, as the DM put it. I'm paraphrasing, but that's mostly verbatim. He says, no, you pull him down off the bow and that's what happened, so remove your spell slot. Before using a legendary action to make an attack against the cleric, I have to tell him that's all for my turn. Wait a minute, hold on 1 second. That's... What? You're punishing the player for their actions after you describe, you understand how this whole thing works. Why don't you just explain then how it works? So maybe say like, hey, if you do that, that's such a dumb move. That is actually such a dumb move. What the hell, DM? Why would the DM just rule like that? It's like they're trying to pull like a gotcha on the player. Like, oh, you move it down? Okay, then fine. We're gonna move it down. Instead of being like, are you sure you want to do that? You'll be landing the character on top. Why not just explain to the players, hey, this is how I'm gonna do the thing. If you want to move characters around and stuff, this is not a 3D plane, this is a 2D plane. Before trying to pull a gotcha on these players, literally the DM is pulling the worst move ever. I mentally check out of the rest of the session from this point on and just go through the motions. Basically just casting either Toll of the Dead or Firebolt until it's all over. Since that misstep was my last spell slot, I ended up scrapping a one-shot that I had in development to co-DM with him. Far off from becoming a reality, we're still working on the map and some niche mechanics that we're going to have to homebrew, plus with the scale I wanted, it was super laggy. TTRPG misunderstandings can happen, but I mean like, I think it'd be kind of up to the DM to make sure that everything is clear. Let's say for example, I hear a player go like, hey DM, so I'm doing this push action to move the boss here. And to me, I'm like, wait a minute, if the player does that, then they just simply pushing the boss closer to the casters, so the casters are gonna have to try to either disengage or have to take an opportunity attack. Of course I'm going to ask for clarification because that'd be the right thing to do. Why is the DM just like, okay, no misunderstanding, this is how it is, this is how I decided, you can't take back, no backseas, no backseas, you did the thing, you know, you did the thing, no backseas. Like, what the hell? A petty thing to do. It's not the biggest horror story out there, but man, that's a petty horror story. Ugh, I don't like this DM. Classless ultimatum and a cheese pizza. In the middle of the Pathfinder 1E life cycle, I was playing a game with some friends. I tend to go for classes that nobody would really pick and try to make something interesting. I decided to play an Oracle of Time because I always wanted to play a character that had some manipulation of time as one of their abilities. I enjoy time travel stories, so this seems to be right up my alley. My game master, let's call him K, at the time didn't like the Oracle class, and specifically the Oracle of Time, because as he mentioned, he felt it was game breaking. He let me play the class even though we had several objections to it. Overall, he never outright specifically forbid me from playing it, so he came to a compromise about the seeing into the future ability. I had to roll a d20 plus my wisdom modifier. I had to roll at least 20 to use the seeing to the future ability, which would allow me to see 6 seconds into the future. Secondly, if I rolled above 25, I'll be able to see one fixed event in time to at least 2 hours into the future. If I didn't succeed the roll, I would see to the future, but I couldn't see clearly. However, if I critically failed, I won't be able to see any amount of time into the future. Although he mentioned several times he didn't like the class, I still went with it anyway, as he never outright forbid me. Because my heart set on this, he relented. Rule number 1, regardless of what TTRPG you're playing, whether it be D&D or Pathfinder, if you don't want a certain subclass or maybe even a class for whatever reason, as long as it's like a regular reason, don't have it. Don't allow the player to play it. I get it, yeah, the player may want to play the Oracle, but maybe you had a really bad time with the Oracle of Time and you're like, no, I would rather not have Oracle of Time. That's not something I'm comfortable with. That's not something I want to deal with. It sounds like a headache. If there's something you're not comfortable with for whatever reason, whether it be as a DM or a player, I mean, especially from a DM's point of view, if you're not comfortable with a specific class out there for like Pathfinder that you just simply would just rather not deal with because of a headache or something, then just tell players, hey, I'm going to have to say no to you, Chief. And it's not that I'm against the player running the class. I think the class sounds really fun. If this DM just can be asked to do it, then just be straight up to your player. Be like, listen, man, it's going to be a bit of a headache. I'm not comfortable with the class. I don't fully understand 100%. And I've made mistakes with it in the past before. And just been very, very like a bad experience for me, so I'd rather for this campaign not have the Oracle. Could you please pick another class? As long as you're upfront to your players about what things you can do and things you cannot do for whatever reason, I think it's fine, because it's part of communication. Maybe the player would have chosen a different class instead and y'all would not be part of a horror story. My character was from the island in which the campaign took place, so my character had knowledge of certain things that were on the island. I used this knowledge to circumvent certain aspects, as my character would know that there's a species of spiders that live in the forest of this island that has venom that isn't fatal to human beings but will cause hallucinations. For 12 seconds, I played my character as a calculated, thought-out character. The character that considered reality to be nothing more than an individual's perception to which he used to help himself several times. My character figured out there's a certain point after walking through the forest I was bit in. The 3 orcs I was seeing were actually my allies in distance. In this particular session, I was having difficulty reading, writing, and speaking, so my character had to consistently roll intelligence checks in order to do anything and such. This is why we decided to take a break. I'm walking with my GM to a nearby McDonald's as it were late in the day and the diner nearby would be a 45-minute wait. He tells me he wants me to change my class as he's having difficulty dealing with it. That's the reason why he constantly mentions that he didn't like the class, is because he was hoping that I wouldn't go for it. I told him that even though he never specifically told me no, if that was the case, he should have specified. He told me he didn't like the idea of a character having time-based abilities and that it broke the system. He didn't like the initial class, and he didn't particularly want to have to go through the book to figure out how to make something challenging for this character, as he didn't like the fact that I was apparently metagaming. I explained to him why I didn't think what I had done was metagaming, considering my character is from the island. I also told him that you have to remember that my intelligence at this point was a +6 and my wisdom is +7. I was the most intelligent character in the game. Plus, one of the abilities that we worked with essentially allowed me to lessen the effect of certain things that affect my mind. He didn't like the idea at all and requested that I played a magus. He explained to me that he will write it into the game. I wasn't exactly thrilled about this, but as you can imagine, for the sake of the story continuing, I agreed. Okay, so there was a communication and the DM voiced their concern, and the player, while not exactly happiest about it, is conceding to it for the sake of playing the game, which I think is fine. See, this is what happens when you talk to your players. Oh wait, the story's not over. Never mind, I think something else is about to happen. Come 5 more sessions and the campaign is finished. Overall, I had a very satisfactory end, even though I didn't get to play my characters I wished. However, this is when things get ridiculous. I decided I'm going to run a campaign. I set up an online document with a hook of the story and other important information for my players. At the bottom of the document was a list of third-party books that I was allowing and homebrew content that I was allowing. All things that can be found online. I made it clear that anything that deviates from the approved list must be met with my approval as an explanation as to why they want it. I don't like to approve or disapprove of something without some level of justification, because I wish to give them all of their chance to explain why they want it. I also told my players that at very points in the campaign that their one character will... That's it. It actually doesn't say anything. Okay. We'll just continue. I have 5 players. Kyle is playing a paladin. The other characters are Rogue, that primarily uses traps, a transmutated wizard or ranger, and an oracle of time. With the exception of Kyle, everything took a few things from third-party content. The Oracle of Time took a few things here and there from the third-party content as it helped to balance out the character, but also fit the character's backstory. The first 3 sessions go smoothly, nothing out of the ordinary. Kyle is the only player that complained at any point in time that I was allowing third-party content because he didn't like third-party content. I told him that it was my decision and my campaign, and I felt that having third-party content in the game gave my players more variety, which is why I wanted to include it. The main reason why I included it was because I wanted to give my players a variety of stuff to go through. I only had 4 third-party content books and 3 of them that were homebrew. I explained to him why I added each thing. I figured that if it bothered him that much, perhaps an explanation would change his opposition to my use of it in my campaign. I wanted to have more spells and feats available to the player, plus considering the fact that I was adding sci-fi element to the game, having some of the third-party content was necessary. He did not accept my explanation. He said that at least for putting him through the stress of having to deal with other players that are using it, I should at least buy him a cheese pizza. For a few sessions, he never brought up the cheese pizza thing again, so I imagine he was just making a facetious joke with the situation of his own frustrations. Wait, hold on, if the DM decides they're okay with third-party content, why are you having a problem with it? I mean, unless something is like completely busted or unfair or unbalanced, that'd be one thing. Then just tell the DM, hey, listen, this third-party content makes me feel useless because the Oracle of Time can do all these cool things, the Rogue can do all these other cool things, this other player is able to do this other cool things, this other player is doing this other cool things. What's my role in this? Maybe consider playing some of the third-party content, I don't know. Or maybe you would just more prefer like a rules is written baseline kind of guy. I don't know. Whatever, Kyle, whatever you got going on is whatever, but if the DM is cool with third-party content, it's really up to the DM, right? They're the ones running the game, they're the ones that are organizing everything, so either just try to deal with the fact that third-party content is there, or you can always just drop out. I mean, you don't have to be in the game if you don't want to. I'm not saying that like in a passive-aggressive way, by the way. I'm saying that like the DM decides what they want to have or what they don't want to have, right? If the other DM didn't want to have Oracle, that's fine. If this DM wants to have third-party content and some other stuff like homebrew stuff, that's fine too. Everybody runs their game differently. It's up to the DM what they decide they want or they don't want. The next few sessions, he doesn't really do too much and becomes antagonistic towards the player playing the Oracle of Time. He justifies that this is just something his character does, as the place in the world with which he comes from, oracles are not to be trusted. At first, I didn't realize what he was actually doing, because there is a place in my setting where oracles are looked down upon and are considered to be bad omens. The player playing the Oracle of Time also thought this was an in-character thing. With the exception of the wizard, the rest of the party were familiar with my setting, so this isn't actually out of the realm of possibility. I probably would just ask anyway, just in case, because, you know, it could be an actual problem. Just in case would still be good, but I'm assuming the DM never asks about it and something goes wrong. I mean, this was posted on RPGHorrorStories after all. Once it becomes abundantly clear the next few sessions are going to focus around the Oracle of Time, Kyle got progressively more agitated each session. This finally accumulated when the Oracle of Time had a massive flux of power and caused them travel 1 week backwards in time. I'm a narrative-driven game master, and I like to have my players after my story depending on what they do. I don't like to have a strict storyline, as I don't like to railroad my players. However, most of the people that have played with me know that I do have certain points throughout the campaign in which certain things are going to happen. This happened to be one of those things. This is what set off Kyle. He said something to the effect of, "You see, this is why you don't allow oracles in a campaign. I don't allow them in my campaign, and you shouldn't have allowed them in yours. And this is what you have to deal with now." Well, I don't know what the problem is. If the DM specifically wanted them to travel in the past for 1 week, that's fine. Kyle is thinking the DM is just not able to handle it because Kyle can't handle this. But what if the DM wants them to travel in the past? What if it's part of the story? What if they expected this to happen, right? Time travel is not a new thing in TTRPGs, whether it be D&D, Pathfinder, or whatever. I don't know what Kyle's problem is. I think Kyle's just getting agitated because they're like, I wouldn't have ruled it like this if it was me, because it would be too overpowered and stuff. But guess what? The DM is the one in control, and DM was like, yeah, that's fine, I want it to happen. Actually was planning for that to happen. I want it to go on an epic time travel storyline. That sounds cool. Kyle needs to chill out. I left and I explained to him that this wasn't anything up due to the abilities of the character itself. This was just something that was going to happen. This was an answer that he could not accept, and then he went on a tangent. He went a little bit something like this. This is bullshit, and you know it. Stop trying to baby him. I don't like oracles, and I don't like oracles of time. I already accepted that I wasn't going to change your mind about what to use the third-party content in your campaign, but at least you could have done is told him that he couldn't play an oracle of time for my sake, because I don't like having to deal with that class in any capacity. There was no reason for him to pick that character class, and the fact that you didn't consider anyone else, that you let him choose the class and the third-party stuff into the game, is selfish. If you want me to continue playing this game, you owe me something. I'm still holding on that cheese pizza. Either he changes his class or I'm leaving. Bruh, it's not your game. It's the other DM's game. It's the OP's game. And if the OP is cool with it and they want to have an Oracle of Time, it's their choice. If you don't want to be in this game, if you don't like Oracle of Time for whatever reason, then leave. You don't have to stay here. You don't have to play. You just let the rest of the players and the OP, which is the DM, just play. The Oracle of Time, go back in time and kill your parents, and now you have like a whole Batman story arc or something, except instead of being like a superhero, you're just a whiny paladin. If the DM is cool with having them, it's their game. They get to decide what they're cool with. It's not your game. How you run your games is perfectly fine, but you also have to accept that other DMs are not going to do what you want to do. And why should the DM capitulate to your preference of not having a certain class when it's their damn game? It's fine, man, chill out. Kyle's getting way too uptight over this for no reason, and then tries to bargain, you owe me pizza and something else for this. Why? Because the DM decides they are able to run a specific class that's in Pathfinder and they want to be able to use third-party content and homebrew content. The DM is not interesting about this. It's like, yeah, I wanted this to happen. The time traveling and stuff, yeah, I was cool with that. That's perfectly fine. And then you over here, how dare you run Oracle when I'm in this game? Why are you stressing? What is the point? Why are you doing all this? I've never had a player complain about the class another player chose and demanded that their personal thoughts about the player class should be considered when allowing them to play that particular class. I was dumbstruck. I told him to leave. I played with entitled players before, but this was the first time I had a player demand that I force another player to do something because of a class that chose to play. And you know what? Good. I'm glad you told him to leave. Kyle sounds like a jerk. It's not that I mean to give every bad person named Kyle, and I know a lot of Kyles out there that are genuinely nice, but like, it's just an easy name. You know, if somebody has an initial K, the first thing I'm thinking, Kyle. But anyway, it looks like a problem player has been booted because they have a problem with another player playing a class that they don't like to DM and stuff, and apparently now the DM has to capitulate to their wants and needs, and I don't like Oracle, and you should remove from the game that I am in. Why? Seriously, I don't understand this logic. You're not the one DMing. Somebody else is DMing. Why would the DM that is perfectly okay with running Oracles has to listen to what you want to do when it comes to other players' decision? If, let's say, for example, the DM did something bad, like screwed over your paladin some way by forcing your paladin to have some sort of a thing that you guys never agreed on, that'd be one thing. But this is about a whole other player. This paladin, this Kyle, doesn't like that another player is playing Oracle in someone else's campaign. I get it, you don't like Oracle, but like, it's someone else's campaign, bro. Let them run the game how they want to. And with that, that's gonna be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales Tomorrow. Bye-bye.